Okay, so welcome everybody. I imagine some other people will join as we go, and that's okay, but I'm going to start by introducing myself. So I'm Allison Jones. I am the District Manager of Mental Health Services here at TLDSB. I think that's one of my roles, but probably the more important role is that I'm also a mom. I have two teenagers. I have a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old. Hard to believe. And even though it's been a long time since I put those two through the doors of the kindergarten building, I remember it. I remember it really well, almost as if it was yesterday, and all the feelings that went with that. So Mel, do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mel Blackburn. I am the early years consultant, and so I support kindergarten in TLDSB. And I'm a mom also with a child currently in kindergarten. And I also have a daughter who is in grade 6. So really excited about tonight.
Awesome. So during tonight's webinar, we are going to keep your cameras and microphones off. This is just for protecting your privacy. We are recording the webinar, and we're going to be sharing it with other kindergarten families and with educators. Your names will still appear in the recording of who's in the meeting, but it won't appear in the recording that we're sharing with people. And so that's sort of protect your privacy. The other thing is that we've turned off, I think I've turned off the chat feature and left open the Q&A feature. So if anybody wants to ask a question as we go, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the little 9 dots, the waffle is what I call it. And in that, if you press on that, you should be able to pull up the Q&A. And so any questions that you want to ask, they'll be private, so other people won't be able to see your questions, but Melanie and I will be monitoring, and we'll take some time at the end to answer any questions that you might have. So we'll get started. So these are pictures. I mean, I think about on social media, I see these pictures all the time at the beginning. I look forward to seeing these in September. And these images, they could be my kids or your kids. It's a really exciting milestone to start kindergarten, but it also can come with some really mixed emotions for both the kids and the adults. Maybe for you, it was hopefulness, excitement, or maybe some worry or anxiety. You might have even experienced relief that the toddler stage was coming to a close. Once kindergarten begins, there's all kinds of new emotions too. Perhaps your child has adjusted really well, or perhaps not. And you're also met with all kinds of new behaviors. Your child is probably exhausted at the end of every day, and they might show signs of anger or some of that after-school restraint collapse. You might see some of the regression in their behavior to earlier stages of development. They also might tell us stories about what happens at school during the day, and that might lead us to feeling kind of worried, or maybe they don't tell us anything at all. They might cry, they might need more attention, they might have trouble settling at bedtime. All of this leaving parents feeling really confused or worried about what we should do, what we can do to help them. So when registering for this webinar, we asked you to share any questions that you might have, and these are the themes that came up from all of you. So people had questions about managing big emotions, meltdowns, emotion regulation, separation anxiety, crying. Lots of people worry that their child doesn't even want to go to kindergarten, and it's really hard to get them there. Questions about friends, understanding conflict, bullying, developing empathy, and then knowing when and how to seek help. So we're going to try to address all of these topics, but our goal is really a focus on well-being. And so starting with the end in mind, we want to equip you with tools to help you as parents and caregivers to set your kids up for success throughout their school experience and beyond. So what do all of these questions and concerns have in common? Well, they're concerns about self-regulation, learning to regulate emotions and move between states of arousal as needed to function well in day-to-day activities. So for example, moving from a really excited state to calm and ready to settle down, right? Self-regulation is a developmental process. It develops over time and with modeling from you and other adults. And I think most importantly, self-regulation is a predictor of our success at school. Also, it's impacted by all kinds of things. I know that my own I get a little dysregulated being here presenting tonight, and I know that that's just part of my life. I get dysregulated when things are stressful, but this is exacerbated. It becomes more difficult to regulate if we're hungry or if we're experiencing illness, positive or negative experiences, the environment, and the relationships that we have. And so no matter what our age is, we all struggle with this from time to time. So what I've got here is this behavior iceberg. So it can be helpful to sort of think about all the worrisome behaviors and those stories that the kids are telling us from the lens of this behavior iceberg, knowing that what we see is only at the tip of the surface. And your child has so many experiences and emotions that lay underneath, they lay below the surface. And it's easy for us adults to notice the behavior, and then we make a plan to correct or eliminate the behavior that we don't like. As parents or adults, it happens to educators, it happens to me for sure. I get triggered by my own child's upset or their behavior. And I might notice that I also start to feel overwhelmed, frustrated, or even angry. This is a really common experience, and it frequently leads to behavior of our own as adults. Sometimes yelling or trying to convince our kids to be happy. If you've ever yelled at your kids, you are not alone. But we also know that yelling is a solution that is actually a problem. So when our kids trigger us or bring up our stuff, what can we do to help them or help ourselves? If we focus only on the behavior, it can be a distraction from what's really going on for our kids. And we might be missing an opportunity to help them make sense of their feelings and start to develop the ability to manage their big emotions. They may be communicating that they have a skills deficit or a need. They may not have the language to talk about their feelings, or they may need extra attention and affection because kindergarten is a big transition. It's super stressful for little people. They may just be exhausted and they can't keep it together for just one more set of directions. So our goal has to be to stay calm and lean into curiosity and empathy. Let's get really curious about what's going on for them to help them make sense of it too. So that maybe next time, or the time after that, or then the next one, maybe then they'll be able to communicate in more helpful ways. But all of that can be easier said than done. So it can be helpful to frame all of this around the stages of early childhood development. So just as your child has achieved many physical milestones like rolling over, crawling, walking, our social emotional development is formed through different stages. When your child is learning to walk, we welcome the mistakes. We know that they'll totter and fall, they'll bump into things, and this is all a part of their learning process. When it comes to emotional development, we often don't have an accurate understanding of the same stages, and our expectations may not match our child's stage of emotional maturity, which can lead us to not welcoming their mistakes or missing opportunities to help them navigate the world and continue learning these skills. I know that when my kids were little, well, and even now probably, I feel pressure. I think that in society today, we feel a pressure to have like perfect children, kids who don't misbehave, kids who don't experience big emotions, kids who don't fall apart begging for candy in the grocery store lineup, kids who go to bed without asking for a drink 62 times. But I promise you, our kids are still developing. Their little brains don't yet have all of the skills they need. And we want to match their readiness for life by coaching them and supporting them with their social emotional development. Sometimes I think we get caught up in trying to explain our rules or our expectations, and we forget what it's like to be in kindergarten and how much stress our little people are actually experiencing. Their stress is so different from ours, but make no mistake, kids have stress too. As adults, we want to try to understand the world from their perspective instead of trying to get them to see the world from ours. For our purposes tonight, we're going to keep it as simple as possible. So what this image shows is the beginning stages of physical and emotional development that we go through. So we start with infancy, we advance to toddler, and then to school age. And then, of course, adolescence and adulthood would follow, but for our purposes today, I haven't put those on these slides. It's important to note that each one of these stages is dependent on the previous stage. So typically, kids roll over before they crawl before they walk, they walk before they run. Occasionally, kids skip a stage, but for the most part, there's order to the stages, and one is dependent on going through the stage prior. The same is true with the stages of emotional development, that we see some consistency in the way we move through the stages. The other thing that's important is that the stages are distinct. We don't very often mistaken an infant for a toddler or a toddler from a school-age child. Although it's important to know that children are developing skills at different times throughout the process, some developing earlier than others. I always remember seeing parents who were so excited that their child was an early walker or said their first words at a really young age. We need to follow our child's lead. They walk when they're ready to walk, and the same is true for those social emotional development skills. It takes some time, and some develop more quickly than others. So we're going to briefly review some of the milestones of emotional development to help frame where our kindergarten students are developing and how this might shape the expectations we have for them. So the first aspect we're going to look at is thinking. Thinking is just one of the aspects of emotional development. So starting with infants, they don't really have a series of thoughts. They're sensory. They respond to physical cues such as hunger by crying. That's sort of their only way to manage their thoughts. So they don't lie there thinking about what they'd like the adults to do, right? And as they develop into toddlers, they start to see magical thinking. They believe in things that we tell them, even if they're like fantasies, fairy tales. And so we might do those things for the magic of childhood, or we might also use those things to help get them to bed. These toddlers are little sponges. They observe and pick up everything, always asking why, and developing their thought concepts through play, pretending, imagination. As they start to get to the school age, we start to see the development of concrete thinking. So they're very black and white. They're logical thinkers. They understand playful, silly behavior, but sarcasm is not something they can make sense of. They need their adults to be really clear and concrete in their communication. So some of the ways that we can support the development of thinking skills, both at home and at school, are by establishing routines, knowing what to expect, the use of repetition, and again, being really curious about what might be underneath the iceberg, right? What are the things that we don't see behind the behavior, the thoughts and feelings that are underneath? Imagine for us adults, if we have a small problem or a stressor, like maybe you arrive home with your groceries and you need help to carry them in, something small. As adults, we can really quickly think through in our heads how we're going to manage that situation. If we want to help build our kids' skills, what we can do is we can help to develop their thinking by talking out our own process. If I'm navigating a stressful situation, I can talk out loud my thinking process, how I'm going to navigate this situation, and talk about how I'm feeling. And it helps the kids to recognize that thinking is part of the things that adults do, and they start to practice thinking through those things themselves. So this can help to build that skill. One of the other things that kids think about is the passing of time. And so infants don't really have a sense of the past or future, and so they don't really think about the passing of time. As they advance into toddlers, they start to have magical thoughts about the future and past. And so you might have a child who talks about how we went to the beach yesterday, but actually it was 3 weeks ago that we went to the beach. Or the one that comes up a great deal for kids is, it's my birthday tomorrow, or it's my birthday next week. But actually their birthday is 6 months away. So they're thinking about the past, they're thinking about the future, but they're not necessarily making sense of the concept of time. It's not concrete for them. So we might start to say things like, we have to leave the park in 5 minutes, but they don't have an awareness of what 5 minutes is. So then when the time is up, they might have a tantrum at the park and not want to leave. As they get older and advance to the school-age children, they start to develop an understanding of clocks and calendars. It's a new skill, and so it's just developing. And we can support them with this by having them mark off squares on a calendar or use a 5-minute timer. Visuals are really good tools to support this learning, showing them how many sleeps until something they're looking forward to, like a birthday party or an occasion, right? Or using an egg timer or a sand timer to show them how time passes. And that helps them to develop this ability to think about the passing of time. So this self and other, the ability to see another human as separate, right? This is a really important concept, and it helps us to understand why the transition to kindergarten can be so hard for many of our kids. In infancy, there is no separation from parent. Infants have no identity outside of their parent. And toddlers begin to separate from their parents and caregivers. They wander a little bit away, and then they keep those caregivers in close proximity, and they return to them frequently. They can't see the caregivers as being separate from them. They have kind of a magical understanding that those parents only exist for the purpose of being connected to them. As they start to enter school age, they learn to separate from their caregivers, understanding that their parents may do other things during the day, like go to work or go to the gym, and that there are new caregivers to care for them at school. This process develops over time, so we definitely see some more readiness for school from kids who've been in childcare programs or community programs, those who've been cared for by another person. But rest assured that if your child is struggling to separate, this will come. That being said, as you experience your child crying or not wanting to let you go, we know that this is one of the most challenging experiences for parents and caregivers. Please know that you are not alone and that your child's teacher or other school staff can help you with this. We hear from parents that are tempted to keep their child home or withdraw from kindergarten altogether. I know that it's a really, really hard, but I want you to consider that avoidance is not a healthy coping strategy. So we encourage you to ask for help to navigate this difficult time. In most cases, your child is absolutely fine after you leave, but saying goodbye is hard, and they can feel your anxiety about leaving too. So we have a couple of different ways to practice developing this skill. So the first one is to practice like a reverse drop off. And so having mommy or daddy or another caregiver get dropped off at the grocery store or at a fitness class. And we practice waving and saying goodbye to mommy or daddy and then leaving and then coming back for them later. Another thing that you can do when you drop off your child at school, keep your goodbyes short and sweet. Don't draw it out, or your child might perceive that you're worried about leaving them, and this might feel unsafe. A quick drop-off shows them that you believe in them, that you know that they can handle this, and that you trust the school staff to care for them. Help your child see their teachers as their caregivers. We aren't telling them that we'll be back at the end of the day to save them. We're saying that Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so will be taking care of them while they're at school. And that reinforces that they can separate from us. We want our kids to persevere. They can navigate hard things just like us. And finally, at home, you can read stories. Some examples would be The Invisible String or The Kissing Hand, to open some discussion about being connected when we're apart. Another one that comes up a great deal is empathy. So parents commonly feel frustration that their child does not show signs of empathy. And this is a really normal part of development, but it can feel really worrisome for the adults. Infants don't experience empathy at all, and toddlers are also very self-focused. As children enter school age, the empathy starts to develop in small steps, and it starts with those who are most like your child. So we frequently see the development of small cliques, students grouped by shared likes or hobbies. So kids gather in little groups that are interested in Pokemon cards, or kids who want to play in the sandbox, or kids who are interested in playing sports. And so based on their different interests, they develop these little cliquey groups. And that's where empathy begins to develop. But it can also result in some kids feeling kind of left out. And so we may see some early types of behavior that feel like bullying, but it's actually about the empathy skill not being fully developed yet. And really, empathy is something we're working on throughout the lifespan. At school, teachers are working hard to help students develop empathy, but it is a slower skill to develop. So something you can do to help is to tune in to others. So make a point of talking about yourself, what you like, and how you and others might feel, what you might be thinking as you're going through different things. Noticing and naming the perspective of another person, even a character in a book, which Melanie's going to talk about a little bit more in a few minutes. So those are all ways that we can help to build those skills of empathy. We want our kids to know right from wrong. This understanding of the rules develops through trial and error. Infants really have no knowledge, nor should they. And toddlers, they start to make sense of this through the word no. It's our job as parents and caregivers to have rules and boundaries. No is an important word, and kids need to learn how to hear it and how to say it. But toddlers will avoid this word, and they'll be prone to tantrums when we say it. So you can empathize with them. Oh, you really wanted to get that toy at the store, and I know you're so sad or mad that I said no. It's really hard hearing no. But then we also need to hold the boundary. Both things can be true. And it's good for a child's development of this skill to hear the word no, and that we can empathize with it, but still stay true to what we said no to. Sometimes we're tempted to give in. We buy the toy, we eat the ice cream, or do whatever is necessary to try to restore the happiness for our child. And when we do that, we're taking away opportunities to develop these skills, learning right from wrong, and also to develop resilience. School-age children are still learning this, and they typically start following the rules when someone is watching them. If they worry about getting in trouble, they'll follow the rules. But if left unsupervised, they likely will not. So children at this age like positive reinforcement. They seek to please adults. They want us to be proud of them or to give them positive attention. Sometimes people try external rewards like stickers or small toys as a reward, which can at times be effective in changing behavior in the moment. But these kinds of external rewards won't support the development of ethics. They might change behavior in the short term, but if we want to grow the skill of knowing right from wrong, we have to internalize the experience, which is always done through relationships. So we want to focus on helping our kids, and of course it requires supervision to make that happen. And lastly, the last one is ego strength. So how they manage anxiety and solve problems. Again, infants are really sensory beings, so their experience of anxiety is around getting their immediate needs met. They cry to let us know when they have a need, and that is their management system for problem solving. As they develop, children start to look for transitional objects for soothing. If you've ever lost your child's favorite stuffy or their special blanket, you know how important this object is for them to soothe. They also are busy seeking connection from parents and caregivers as transitional objects too, helping them to sleep or soothing them when they have problems. As we get to school age, children are starting to learn ways to manage anxiety or to solve problems, but they're still really heavily dependent on adults to help them with this skill. One of the best ways to develop this skill is through play. So a couple of things about play. Open-ended play is where we encourage exploration with no specific outcome. We're not looking to produce something, we're just playing for the sake of play. The other is the world of make-believe or pretending. And I am not a parent who loves pretending with my child, but the world of make-believe and pretending helps them develop language skills, and it allows them to practice talking in character. They start to explore words and sentences, body language, and facial expressions. This is a skill that develops throughout the lifespan. Our kindergarten kids are far from mastering these skills. So find opportunities to talk out loud about your own problem-solving tools. Give them opportunities to try a solution of their own, or to consider ways to help their doll or a character in a book. Show them how we all navigate feelings and allow them to experience a whole range of emotions. So hopefully, as we've explored the emotional development in this way, we can work to align our expectations with our child's readiness and continue to support their development. Just like we welcomed their mistakes as they were learning to walk, we want to welcome their mistakes in emotional development too. These are opportunities for us to support their learning and growth, although it may be tempting at times to want to punish them. I like to distinguish the word punishment from discipline. Discipline is a word that comes from the Latin disciplina, which means instruction, training, or to learn. It is our job to model and teach the behavior that we seek. And sometimes this is hard. Our kids don't already have the discipline to respond to our boundaries or our instructions. And so they react. They're triggered into a state of fight or flight, and they might cry or tantrum and shut down. And this is so hard for the adults. I think co-regulation is a really, really important thing for us to consider. So what co-regulation is, it's a process of matching emotions, recognizing and responding to each other's emotional states. If you've ever noticed yourself yawning right after someone else yawns, it's like that, but with emotions. You might have noticed that when someone you love feels sad, you can start to take on a sad feeling too. Or if you go somewhere where somebody feels really angry, you can notice your heart beating faster and you might start to take on those angry feelings. If we're being really honest, this is probably the most difficult part of parenting. Our bodies are designed to react to danger to keep us safe. So if a car is coming towards us, our brain kicks in with extra adrenaline and our fear response takes over, causing us to leap to safety without having to think. Or we pull our hand away from a hot stove. But sometimes when kids are having a meltdown or they're behaving in ways that we aren't happy about, our brains can understand that to be a dangerous threat. It's actually a false alarm, but your brain will do whatever it can to keep you safe. You might notice that when your child's behavior becomes challenging, you become dysregulated. Signs of emotional distress show up in our bodies. Some signs that you are dysregulated might include your heart rate increasing, your breathing changes, you might feel hot, you might notice your emotions heightened, feelings of frustration, annoyance, anger, or sadness. This is co-regulation in action. It's just us upregulating to match their energy rather than them downregulating to meet ours. Similarly, when our emotions are heightened, so are our children. So if we come at something from a place of anger or frustration, their heart rate will increase and it will amp up their physical behavior. So if co-regulation can cause us to get dysregulated or join our child in their heightened state, it can also work to calm their systems down. But it only works if we are regulated first. It starts in infancy. So when babies cry, we move in to meet their needs. It often includes a little rock, 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 pat, pat, pat to soothe the baby in the moment. For our school-aged children and beyond, co-regulation is the most effective tool to support them in the development of their social and emotional skills. But it really requires us adults to regulate ourselves. We need to reduce the urgency to resolve a problem or correct behavior and focus on our relationship first. We regulate the child, we relate to them and reassure them that our relationship with them is the most important. And then we come in to reason with them and help them understand where they need to shift their behavior. All of this is best done in a shared space, keeping our kids close, providing some reassurance that the relationship with you is safe, even if the behavior is not okay. So I've provided some examples of what it could look like. For some kids, there's physical contact, comfort, cuddling, rocking. Some kids don't want to be touched when they're in the state of meltdown or tantrum or they're so upset. We might provide them with verbal reassurance and letting them know it's okay, we'll be right here when you're ready to talk about it. Sometimes just singing or humming or reading, it can be very regulating for kids. Offering them some choice, going for a walk, or even just sitting in silence. Being close to you is really important to kids because they need to know that even though their behavior was not great, they still are loved. The PACE model was developed by Dr. Dan Hughes. It's a way of thinking, feeling, communicating, and behaving that aims to make a child feel safe. PACE reminds us to slow down, to respond, not react, to look underneath the surface to see what's behind the behavior, and then respond using the 4 components of the PACE model. We share this today because it's a model that we've been working with educators across our system to better understand. And as we've been exploring the skills tonight of the social emotional development, you'll recall we've talked about all of these same concepts. We've talked about the power of play in development. You can also use a playful approach as you're parenting, using a light tone of voice, storytelling, singing, getting creative, doing art, or listening to music together. We want to keep things light, tell jokes, play a board game, movement, just add elements of fun that help your child. We talked about accepting the needs and emotions that drive the behavior. So we look beneath the surface. We accept that child. I'm disappointed by what you did, but I know you were really upset and it doesn't change how much I care about you. We've talked about curiosity, being curious without judgment, trying to think about a child's thoughts, feelings, wishes, and intentions. The truth is that children often know that their behavior wasn't appropriate. They also often do not know why they did it. Curiosity without judgment is how we help young kids become aware of their inner life and reflect upon the reasons for their behavior. And lastly, empathy. So we want to show kids empathy. We're showing them that their feelings are important to us and that we're alongside of them in the difficulty, trying to understand how it feels, not against them. So this is something we're working with educators to try to help them use in the school system. Each of you received this resource, with 12 tools to try to promote well-being and resilience at home. So the activities are all designed for our young learners and represent some simple ways that we can develop these social emotional skills. We continue to use the same skills throughout the lifespan. I still rely on the breathing strategies, recognizing emotions in other people's faces, problem solving. Each one of the 12 skills in this resource is something that is a skill I still use to this day. We're going to look at just a few other ways that that we can help children to develop their social emotional skills. So routine, there is great power in routine. They thrive in routine when they know what to expect, when we hold boundaries. We've talked about play. We really want to encourage that open-ended play, pretending skills. We want to read, sing, explore the outdoors together, have fun. Playing with siblings or peers develops social skills like turn taking, conflict, perspective taking. The skills of independence will certainly help them in kindergarten and beyond. So we want to give them opportunities to practice getting dressed in their winter gear, practice zippers and snaps and buttons, practice the washroom skills, flushing, wiping, washing. We also know that at school, during nutrition breaks, they're responsible for their own snacks, the containers. So give them an opportunity to practice taking the lids off, putting the lids on, how to manage the containers that we send to school. Try using visual schedules to help increase your child's sense of independence, right? Bedtime routines or morning routines on a visual schedule can really help them to increase their independence skills. Sleep. I can't say enough about sleep. Sleep is essential for kindergarten children's growth, their cognitive development, their emotional well-being, supporting memory, concentration, mood regulation, and a strong immune system. During sleep, the body and brain rest, grow, and process the information learned during the day, with sufficient rest allowing children to be more energetic, focused, and better equipped to handle new learning and social interactions. And finally, screen time. The skills of social emotional learning don't develop in the absence of caring relationships with caregivers. These days, it seems that so many young children are given screens to soothe them or placate them, largely so that we as adults will have more time as adults to get our jobs done, like making dinner or tidying up, or even just so we can have some time to ourselves. It's important to note that the use of screens can actually be harmful to the development of social emotional skills. So with that in mind, I encourage you to consider how much screen time your children are exposed to and look for ways to balance this with outdoor play and human connection. And finally, we couldn't talk about kindergarten success without talking about reading. So I'm going to turn it over to Melanie to talk about how reading is connected to well-being and a few more tools for you to try at home.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to pin my screen, so hopefully you can see me. As Allison said, hopefully many of you did receive this strategy flipbook in your child's mailbag coming home. But what's really exciting about this are not only the activities that exist within this, but the idea that we continuously cycle back to those. And we want to make sure that we're cycling back to these strategies when not only when our children are in a high emotional state or a low emotional state, but also in a calm state, so that eventually they've practiced it so many times in a calm state. They know how to use those tools in a calm state, that when they are in that really high emotional state or low emotional state, they'll be able to put those tools to use. And so I thought it would be really interesting if we could think about how we recognize and practice using these tools in everyday contexts. And so many people have books at home, and so I thought it would be really great to just highlight how we can support wellness in our children through laughter and literature. And so really you can use these tools with almost any text in your home, as long as they are fictional texts. Then there's always going to be a problem and a solution to talk about, and how you might manage that stress. So some of the benefits to using text to talk about wellness with your children are they are going to learn language and syntax and develop speech. It's going to also create a bonding experience for you and your child, which signals safety and emotional connection in and of itself. It establishes that evening routine for your children so they know to expect that. And it also builds background knowledge, because later, when they begin to learn to read in junior kindergarten or year one and senior kindergarten and into grade one, you're going to want them to have a background knowledge that they can refer to when reading and also when writing. What is important to note is it's never too late to start reading. So if you're feeling like I don't have that as a routine right now, it's never too late to get started and just curl up with a really good book with your kiddos. Also, rereading stories. This is amazing. And if your children are memorizing them, and if you're reading, Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus 8,000 times, that's amazing, because children are going to start developing an understanding of how texts are put together. Again, those language skills. So rereading is a really great thing to be doing. And take advantage of your local library. It is free in your area to get a card and check out books. And you can also do a book swap with friends if you're feeling like we've read these books a million times. We need some new ones. Get 20 books together and swap them with some friends and get some new ones. And also just ensuring that we're exposing our children to different types of texts. So not only the fictional text or stories that we have, but also exposing them to nonfiction texts and finding out what some of their passions are around dinosaur bones or space or things like that might really spark their curiosity. So what I wanted to do is just show you that it doesn't matter the book that you pull off your shelf. Once you've done some of these activities with your kiddo, you can then find places within text to use and practice those strategies. So for example, when we read to kids in schools, we think about, what do we ask our kiddos before reading, during the reading of a text, and after reading? And so I'm just going to model for you with this silly book, The Wrong Book. It's a book about a bookmark who goes on a journey and he starts interacting with these animals and people around him, but they're not saying the things that they should. So it's a super silly, fun book that may really get those emotions running high, and you can actually practice using some of these strategies. So before reading, tonight it's going to be a really silly book. So let's do our deep belly breathing to get our bodies ready for reading. So again, we're practicing these strategies in a calm, positive state, so that when we have those lows and we refer back to that deep belly breathing, it's going to be an automatic response for them to practice that skill and put it to good use. So just practicing that even before. You might get to a page where we can connect back to gratitude and highlighting for our children what are the great things in our life? What are the positives? So again, when those negatives happen that are not so great in our life, we know that there's many other positives around us to be thankful for. So taking that moment of gratitude and modeling, I'm really grateful for the flowers. What's something you're grateful for? Again, so on this page, it's a silly part where the bookmark is walking and the elephant is not saying the right thing. It says ding dong. And so again, not only practicing to use these tools during those low emotional, high stakes moments, but also taking a moment when something's really silly and saying, this book's really silly. Let's use our thermometer that we made. What would we rate this? Is this silly? Is this silly on a scale of 1? Or would you put it on a 5 for silliness? And so really just engaging in those conversations using those tools, knowing that many of these tools are also the strategies that your child's classroom teacher would be using. So you're using that same language and practicing those same strategies. Here's another one. So the bookmark, by the end, we're noticing the emotional state. And so emotions charades is one of the strategies in this text. So remember when we played that game where we acted out our emotions? How do you think the bookmark is feeling right now? And so practicing to name other people's emotions in these heightened states allow us to also be able to identify our own emotions when they happen. And then finally, after the reading. So in this flip chart, there's inspirational graffiti. And so just an idea, I wonder if we could make people laugh. Let's use our chalk to draw pictures, but we're gonna make them say really silly things, just like in the book. So really using that text as a follow-up to what could we do next to add on to this? Or what's an activity to keep going because my child enjoyed this text so much? So I just wanted to show you that it really doesn't matter any text that you are reading with your child. These strategies can be applied in so many different ways all throughout the text. And if you're finding that you don't have a lot of texts at home at your fingertips, but you do have access to a piece of technology, then at TLDSB, we do offer this free digital library, and it's called Sora. You can sign up for free. And you would just go to the TLDSB website. In Google, you can type in TLDSB Sora, and you can scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says caregivers, and then it's going to show you this form, and it says to fill out this form. And on there are all of the newest, most popular texts. There's more being added every day. Some of them you can listen to as audio texts. Some of them you can just read and swipe like an actual book that would be in your hands, and all of those are free and at your fingertips. So we really encourage you to sign up if that's something that you're interested in.
Amazing, thank you. Oop, I have done something funny here. And I apologize, trying to pin myself again. Okay, I think I'm pinned. I'm not entirely sure.
Pinned you.
Oh, you pinned me, okay. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So as you go through this, navigating your child's wellness, navigating social emotional development, it's really important that you know that you are not alone. There are other parents, there are other caregivers, and there are other children who are going through the similar kinds of things that you are. Sometimes we feel very alone, we feel very isolated. Parenting can be a very isolating experience, and I want you to know that you're not alone. Some of the resources that are available to help you, I always encourage people to reach out to their child's teacher. The teacher is the first point of access, and really they know your child better than anyone else in the school. But every school also has access to a mental health counselor. There is a mental health counselor assigned to every one of our schools at TLDSB. Now, we don't provide direct counseling to children in kindergarten because that would not be an evidence-based intervention, but we definitely consult with parents and provide coaching and provide training and support, and we navigate conversations and help to figure out when might you want to access some more intentional supports. Across every one of the communities in our school board, there's access to free community-based mental health counseling. And that can be accessible for children or for families, for parents who might need some support navigating tricky situations. I also wanted to share some information about the Circle of Security. And so if you feel like you've learned a little bit here tonight, but boy, you could use something a little bit more deep, or you'd like to engage in something a little bit more intensive in terms of parent support, the Circle of Security Parenting Program is something that we offer through TLDSB. It's offered virtually to kindergarten through grade 3 parents, and it's our mental health counselors who deliver this program. It's an evidence-based program that focuses on supporting parents to understand and meet their child's needs for attachment. At TLDSB, Circle Security Parenting is a virtual program. So each session is 1.5 hours long, and we have 8 sessions. And so we try to offer the sessions both in the afternoon and the evening to accommodate people with different types of schedules. So if this is something you might be interested in taking, you can reach out to your child's teacher, the principal, the vice principal, or the mental health counselor. We're running a wait list at this time. We don't want to, we haven't set dates for the program because we want to gauge people's interest and what time of day works best for people so we can establish when the sessions will begin. Thank you all so much for joining. I know that it's a difficult time of day with little people in our houses who are trying to get to bed or trying to get supper too. So I appreciate people giving up their time and joining us for this webinar. And we will send out a feedback form as well. And we would love to hear from you about whether this was helpful and some other topics that you would be interested in learning about. So thank you again. Have a great night. Take care.